of the week. So the DM question of the week is how to DM for only one player. I just recently played or saw you playing with a single player.
Yes.
That kind of inspired this.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, there's just a lot that can change and should change when you're dealing with one player, because one player is very different, even different than two players. So you have like 2, 3, 4. Those can be pretty similar, but once you drop to one, it's a new game. It's a new style of game. Things drastically change. So because it's just not like part of D&D is the teamwork, is the debating,
yeah.
the strategizing. That takes up a ton of time in D&D, and it's one of the funnest parts. So when you take that away, you have to alter how you DM, right? To make up for that. And if you do it right, it can be actually a lot more fun for that player. I have always preferred more players when I'm the DM.
I mean, I remember when you just DM'd me, I turned to Batman.
But that was
sick.
very different. Yeah,
it was.
People tend to like the one-on-ones when they're the player. So let's go through what we would change about the DM style or strategy when we're dealing with one player. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I can say one thing. So as the DM, you're probably going to be relying on a lot more NPCs. Because no, you can make the dungeon easy, but if you want like a fun dungeon for your player that's difficult, you should add some people to help your player. Make it like realistic, like you can't fight a solar or a dragon or a high demon 1v1. That's just nearly very hard to do, so if you add NPCs to make up the bolstering of the party, that's a way to give your player a more difficult time in the game for their
So let's talk about NPCs. I think I disagree, but I think I can agree if there's some tweaks. So definitely. So I get what you're saying. The action economy of D&D is vastly important of who wins, right? So if you have a dragon with legendary actions, that's all there to defeat 4 people. That's not there to fight one, right? So if you don't have more teammates, it can be almost impossible to have your one player fight anything of grand power. So I have a few things to say about this. One, why do you need to fight something of grand power? That's my first thing. If you do, all you really need to do is make your player more powerful than that thing. So give them a really good magic item or something.
True.
But here is why I would recommend avoiding putting a bunch of NPCs in the party. Obviously, you're going to have a ton of NPCs in the game because that's where you're getting all your social interaction from. But putting them in the party as basically characters is problematic for a couple of reasons. One, it really bogs down the achievements of your player, because if you have your player just kind of being one among a bunch of NPC players, then defeating the dragon is not that big of a deal when the DM basically had their barbarian kill their own dragon. You know what I mean? It's the DM is creating a problem, and the DM is solving that problem themselves.
Well, I mean,
that's one problem.
I don't really explain it that way. Maybe, because since the DM is the NPCs and the players, you should have it halfway through the fight, the dragon kills your friends. The player's friends.
You could, but you can only do that
so it
once.
Kind of
so right? So
I guess so, yeah. Or the other one kind of drops his weapons and flees, or one turns out to be a bad guy. Just stuff like that. I'm not saying you don't, but to weaken the boss, you could use NPCs, or as you say again, magic items. That works too. You can load your player up with some awesome, super strong stuff. That would be kind of cool.
I just think, okay, so your main reasoning is about bosses. you just make your boss less powerful. If you're so like a CR, like if you are fighting, if as a party of 4 you're fighting one type of creature, you just don't have your one player fight that type of creature until they're at a higher level. You just basically have less big monsters. You know what I mean? You don't need big monsters to have a good game. You don't need one. So just don't have one, period. There's a million options. Choose the ones that are equal to your player. That's all you got to do for combat. But I think there's some more issues to having NPCs than just bogging down combat and taking away achievements. It also takes your attention off what really matters. You as a DM have a lot to do, and actually now you have a lot more to do because you have one player. So you don't have those moments where they're like where the players are talking to one another to like get
that
stuff
is
going.
True, yeah.
You have to be on your game the whole time. And so if you're also focused on playing characters while you're being the DM, it's just gonna it's completely unnecessary for you to have to do that. So just don't do it. Avoid it. But if you are going to do it, I think there are some ways of making it work. So one of the issues that I mentioned is it takes away the achievement, right? Like if you're fighting an ogre and the NPC is the one that deals the final awesome blow, and all the player did was like shoot a spell or something, then it's like the player is not going to feel that satisfaction. You know what I mean? Even if a different player killed the ogre, that would still feel good. But when the DM kills their own ogre, that's just like you know what I mean? So it's like So to avoid that, you can do a couple things. Actually, before I say what they are, another problem is the player can start relying on those NPCs. So you know how when you have players, you have to strategize and you have to be like, what should we do? I think we should do this. I think we should do this, right? Well, if one of those characters is the DM, it's like, oh, well, you're right. My opinion doesn't matter. If you think we should do this, obviously.
Just have those NPCs be Skyrim companions. They just have like 3 things they can say. It's like, yeah, I'll carry some stuff. Where do you want me to go? Alrighty.
Yeah, it's like, oh my. It's like the dragon. What do you think we should do? I can carry some stuff.
I will carry your burdens. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a good point. That's one way. So yeah, let's get into what you can do with these NPCs to make sure they don't
make them brain dead.
They aren't problematic. One is make them literal drones. But they're also like sidekicks that follow orders.
Exactly. Just have like a little goblin companion. He'll just help.
Yeah, something like that where you give them basically to the control of the player. And this can be done in a way that isn't a video game. It can be like, no, they've indebted their life to you, or like they are just the follower type, like they're a squire, or you are someone that is worthy of respect, and so they just follow you as a follower, and they aren't very like impulsive anyway. They're pretty indecisive actually, and they actually get comfort from following your orders, stuff like that. So you can create NPCs that work.
I like the Skyrim one. It's just like, the giants are coming. I'll carry your burden. No, I'm not saying that now. We gotta go kill them.
Tell me where to go.
Tell me where. They got close. Just pulls out the bow.
Yeah. Okay, but there's some other things you can do. When you're dealing with players relying on what your NPCs tell them to do, let's say you want your NPCs to be like somewhat not brain dead, just make them real. Make them make mistakes. So if make the NPC be like, I think we should really go this way. I think this is the right way. And then it's absolutely not the right way. It ends up being completely the wrong way. And then that will teach the player that the NPCs, like you are playing the NPCs as if they don't know what's going on, as if they know as much as anyone else. So that would make them trust their word as much as another player. So that's good.
Or just have it where like when they go to low health, they kind of fall to their knee, and they're kind of like, like what they do when they're low health. Like only the player can accidentally kill your follower. Like when they drop to 0 hit points, they just fall to the knee and they're done for the fight. But But then once battle's over, they just get right back up.
No, they definitely should die.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay.
just like, how come you're not fighting when it's all fighting? It's all good. Well, no, I mean, maybe I just didn't want to fight, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is. They're resting. But yeah. Okay, so another one is similar to what we were saying, but you can make them just indecisive and like overly obvious in terms of like they have a set viewpoint. And this is kind of how you roleplay sometimes, but you can kind of simplify it for this case. So, for example, like they could have the opinion that violence is never the answer. So if you're like, what should we do? They're like, we should try to be peaceful. It's like, okay, no, we shouldn't.
We're being peaceful to these zombies? Bro.
It's like, we don't know how they feel. Like, yes,
they're dead.
You can make kind of comical characters like that. Yeah.
They're dead.
And that's kind of how you can deal with NPCs. So, there. We talked about NPCs. Otherwise, if you're just doing regular NPCs, you're going to be doing them a lot. So be ready to roleplay because you are the only source of roleplay for that player. So you better get ready for it. Okay, but here's some other overarching things I would add to that change. The first main one is you can really focus on the character that your player is playing as, since there's literally only one to focus on.
Yeah, like focus on his backstory and his goals.
Exactly. Really get the character to have a cool arc. Get them to change throughout the story. Focus on their backstory. Yeah, definitely do that. Similarly, focus on the player. Give them a style of campaign that they really like, because they're the only one playing. So why wouldn't you make it perfect for them?
You're going to be fighting slimes. Not again, DM. I've been fighting slimes for the past 2 hours. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, but let's say you're playing like a big adventure campaign with all your friends, and then like a bunch of them cancel and only one comes. Make that session what they like. So maybe it's like extremely horror-like, or maybe it's like a ton of role-playing. They hate combat. Why would you give them combat? Or maybe they only like combat and they hate role-playing, so they're just going to have a giant battle. So like give them what they want, because they are the only person you have to appease. You know what I mean? So you kind of narrow your campaign a little more.
Exactly, yeah. Focus on the player, guys, as DMs. Focus on your one player.
Yes. The next thing that changes is you're going to have to prep a lot more. This is the downside. The game will move way faster because instead of playing being like, oh, what should we do? And then they like talk about it for 30 minutes, as always happens with mine.
It's so true. It's like,
I should probably push them a little more, but
it's like, what do we do, guys? It's like you just open the door to the tavern. It's like,
yeah, but if you only have one player, there's none of this debating. So they're just gonna do stuff, right? And so you're gonna fly through your prepared material. So you're gonna need to prepare a lot more. One way you can offset this is if you spend a lot more time describing and a lot more time like setting tone. Not only does that make the game better, but it does kind of kill some time because you need to. And then the last thing is really focus on the plot. In this extra prep, make the plot cool, because now you can actually have that cool plot. It's not going to be so chaotic as it always is, right? Because players are constantly like going all different directions, and now you can probably actually give this player like a pretty concise and like contained plot that really like has foreshadowing and like does all this cool stuff. So a one-player campaign, surprisingly, requires a lot more work. But if you do it right, it can be a lot more
it's very
fruitful for that player.
Also for the DM as well. Like, you feel like it's like making your plot, you can, as a DM, you can really focus on that plot. Like, you're not going to have that one guy that's like, we're going to go to that random forest where the random, and you're just like, oh my god. You know, like, you're like, guys, go in the dungeon. But you can't say that, so you have to be like, oh, okay. You know, and then you just roll. You're like, oh, they're fighting giant spiders. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
yeah, it can be better. I still prefer... One of my favorite parts of DMing is just kind of watching my players interact with each other. So when that's gone, that is a big pillar of why I like D&D. But so I will always like there to be at least two people. But I have DM'd for one person before. Ethan being one, and
it was probably one of your well-crafted ones.
Well, it was entirely designed for you, so that would make sense.
I was well, yeah, no, I was. Well, that was probably. that was like our first, like, that's when we were beginning. I didn't know who Drow were, and I was trying to be nice to them. And then I realized, I was like, they're awful.
Yeah, Ethan, it was a campaign, so it was just Ethan, and it was him basically exploring the Shadowfell for the first time. So,
and that was a paladin.
I forget the name of the city, but he was in one of the classic Shadowfell cities. Also going through the forest and stuff.
So lucky.
He got some cool magic items to kind of help with the power levels.
Yeah, but kind of like tortured my kid.
It's the Shadowfell. Yeah, if you get a magic item from the Shadowfell, you better know
But
there's going
it
to be a
doesn't
downside.
make sense. How did they get my family's soul?
That was the whole plot.
But you said it was like, it's a maybe. But I was just
but you don't know. Yeah, I'm not just going to tell you the answer. Anyway, that is the answer to how to DM for only one player. Hopefully that was helpful if you have that coming up. But yeah, it can really be a fun time. So make a simple story that's made for this player and really flesh it out. And you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And even for the DM playing with one character, as I recently did, it is pretty fun sometimes. You do lose like the team building for your players, but for you, like, it is kind of nice because you get to focus a lot more about the plot and about that player, and you can make that player so happy with like plot twists, with like their arc.
Yeah.
It is very rewarding.
If you're the DM, don't worry about. Worry about the player having fun, but don't like worry about it because they will have fun. You're giving them all your attention, so there's absolutely no way they're not going to enjoy that to some extent, right? Like they're going to get to do whatever they want in this game. The only thing I personally don't like about being the only player is, again, I like interacting with other players.
Exactly.
It's fun to do that.
Yeah, so it has its pros and cons, and D&D can be designed for, it's 2 to 6 players.
Yeah.
But it is generally a team building game because combat is generally for strategy team. But
But it's actually pretty common. Like if you have a spouse, right? Like not everyone has a group to play with. So you might just have a brother or a wife or whoever that you play with, and it can be a ton of fun, and you can just role play with each other and build a story together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Or play with your cat or dog. They would probably screw up the dice.
Better have a lot of treats.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.